Welcome back, amazing leaders, to another powerful episode of Season 3, Building Leadership Community Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Dora Mendez, and today's conversation is one you absolutely need to hear. We're diving deep into what it truly means to create a culture where people don't just show up, they thrive, where inclusion isn't a buzzword, but a lived experience where 600 plus employees across 23 locations feel connected, valued, and empowered to reach their full potential. Our guest today is doing exactly that work, and he's been recognized for it. Joining us is Stephan Spilkowitz, executive leader, board member, organizational culture architect, and recent honoree as a nonprofit trailblazer by City and State Magazine. By the end of this conversation, you will walk away with actionable strategies to transform your workplace culture, a deeper understanding of what inclusive leadership truly requires, and the inspiration to lead with intention, empathy, and impact. This episode is your blueprint to build organizations where people flourish, not just function. So, settle in, take a breath, and get ready. Hello, and welcome to Building Leadership Community Podcast. I'm your host, Dora Mendez. I am the founder and CEO of Coach Dora LLC. Our guests will be entrepreneurs, small business owners, and community leaders that drive social impact. It can be lonely at the top, but it doesn't have to be. It means so much that you join us week after week for these conversations. We appreciate how you continue to be part of Season 3. It can be lonely at the top, but it doesn't have to be. This is why we started the podcast. If you are new to Building Leadership Community, we are so glad that you're here. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that bell button at the bottom of the screen so you get notified when new episodes drop. Say hi in the comments. We read them and we respond. And so we love to hear from you. Before we dive into today's conversation, I want to take a moment to speak directly to the leaders listening right now. If you're someone who carries responsibility, vision, and ambition, and you're also quietly aware that your well-being has been living on the back burner, I want you to know this. You're not broken and you're not alone. That's exactly why I created Coach Dora's Wellness Club. This isn't just another membership. It's a monthly sanctuary for leaders who want to take care of themselves without dimming their drive or lowering their standards. Inside the Wellness Club, we gather once a month for live wellness sessions where we slow things down just enough to get clear. We'll work with journaling prompts, stress management tools, and leadership reflections you can actually use in real life. You'll also get exclusive coaching around AI fluency for leadership and wellness, helping you stay future ready while protecting your energy and focus. And just as important, you'll be part of a private community of leaders who truly get it. No performative self-care, no hustle culture guilt, just thoughtful people navigating growth together. Each month, we'll also explore simple, practical well-being challenges designed to fit into real schedules and real leadership lives. If you're ready to lead with clarity, steadiness, and intention, I'd love to welcome you into this space. You can learn more about Coach Dora's Wellness Club in the description below. Now, let's get into today's episode. Let me tell you how I met our guest, Stephan. In June of 2025, we were on a panel together. It had a technical title, Creating Wellness for Nonprofit and Monitoring Population Health. We had a lovely time really sharing about how we support wellness and people who are doing amazing work in human services and in the nonprofit space. Let me tell you more about Stephan's amazing work. He is the Director of Engagement and Culture at Westchester Jewish Community Services, WJCS, Westchester's largest provider of outpatient community mental health services. In this role, he leads the charge in creating an exceptional employee experience for over 600 staff members across 23 locations, ensuring that every single person feels included, connected, valued, and supported to reach their full potential. With 14 plus years of multifaceted experience across mental health, human service, and environmental nonprofits, Stephan brings a wealth of knowledge to the table. He also serves as vice chairman of the board for Groundwork in the Hudson Valley, an environmental social justice nonprofit, and is deeply engaged in the nonprofit sector through Nonprofit Westchester and federal advocacy work with the Network of Jewish Human Services Agencies Advocacy Committee. What does this guy not do? Recently, City and State magazine recognized him as a nonprofit trailblazer. And once you hear him speak, you will understand why. You'll fall in love with him just like I did. Stephan is also an organization development consultant and co founder of Eclat Culture. I'll make sure he pronounced that again in case I got that wrong with his wife, Camilla Knight. He holds a BA in psychology from Cornell University and an MA in organizational psychology and change leadership from Columbia University. Today, Stephan is here to share his insights, his strategies, and his leadership wisdom with you all. Let's bring him to the stage. Bye, Stephan.
Hi, Dora. How are you? Thank you so much for having me on and for your kind words. That introduction was incredible. Thank you.
I meant every word of it, and that's why you're here today. We had such a fun time when we didn't know each other before, and it was as if we did, as if we knew each other forever. We share similar philosophies when it comes to wellness and people and culture, and we both share that in common that we've dedicated our careers to helping people, to serving people, and we also work with our spouses. Can you I'm not sure if I pronounced it correctly. Can you share the name of the company you work with your wife with?
Sure, happy to. It's éclat culture, which means star culture or shining culture in French, actually. And I should also correct my wife's name is pronounced Camila, and she does not miss a beat in terms of she gets Camilla most of the time, but she's quick on the correction there. But she's a great partner in life and with work as well. She herself is a DEI and human resource professional, so we kind of bring the HR and the organization development work together. And we've worked with nonprofits, business entities, and really just trying to help people and teams reach their full potential.
Well, so we have that in common. As you know, the producer of this podcast is my spouse, Dylan Rogers. He
Mhm.
likes to stay in the wings. So working with your spouse has its challenges, but somehow we figured it out, right? So let's. I could talk to you about so many things, but let's get right to what we ask all our guests. If you can share with our listeners and our viewers a bit about your leadership story.
Sure, I'm happy to. So, throughout my leadership journey and professional journey, there's been two things that have been fairly constant: service and fun. And it goes back to my very first leadership opportunity, which is in my college days when I was philanthropy chair of my fraternity. So that was my first opportunity to step into any kind of a leadership role, and I wanted it to mean something and to do good for others. And from there, I went on to to recruitment, the rush chair, and was involved in party planning, but also with an element of really ensuring that people enjoyed their time in joining our organization, because it was a community, it was friends, but at the end of the day, it was also an organization. Um, Beyond that, I went on to work in the mental health field, since I have always been fascinated and interested and dedicated towards people. I started working at Andrus, a large mental health nonprofit serving youth who had experienced early childhood trauma. And pretty quickly, I gravitated towards recreation therapy and developing programs that I saw had the potential to really give children who had had a really difficult experience an amazing new experience. I ran programs that range from aquatics to a motivational youth dirt bike program, high and low ropes course, animal assisted therapy, a therapy dog program in addition to that, student council, recording studio program. And I always forget something, but suffice to say, I ran a variety of programs that really sought to do both of those things, right? Provide for a fun, engaging, empowering experience, but also was deeply rooted in service and helping people. My interest started to evolve from there as I found myself in leadership roles and really seeing the potential for service at a large scale once you work effectively with leading a team, empowering a team, and really empowering a whole system to function effectively. And so I started to get interested in culture, especially trauma informed culture, working in the mental health space, and went back to school for organizational psychology and change leadership. And through the course of that program and the years that followed, found myself in my current role at WJCS, where I have the privilege and the pleasure of supporting over 600 staff in the life changing work that they do for over 20,000 clients throughout the county of all walks of life, all backgrounds. And I'm really a believer in that philosophy of you take care of the people who are on the front lines delivering care, and everyone benefits. So in my current role, where that's how I see my service to others, my service to the staff of our organization. And of course, the fun is not lost, right? Whether it's our holiday parties, some raffles, some masseuses at our summer barbecue, and
Masseuses. Oh wait, you got to invite me to this party. But go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, I mean, and listen, that's it. We all spend so much time at work. We deserve to have a little bit of fun along the way. And, we think about why we do what we do. It's to elevate, to serve, and to help improve others, especially those most in need. So that's been a little bit about my journey, and it's taken a couple twists and turns as I follow things that are interesting or impactful. Those are my two drivers right there. What's interesting and impactful, but that core element that's kind of followed me throughout is service and fun.
So I want to pick up on something that you mentioned about serving others. And I mentioned that I started a wellness club, right?
Hmm.
And so maybe I'm taking advantage of your expertise, but what do you do to take care of yourself? You're giving so much to others, and you 20,000 clients, 600 staff. You're giving so much to others. What do you do to take care of yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Dora. I think it's essential, and especially those in leadership roles, you're holding not only for yourself, but you're holding for others. Add to that, I'm a dad, so first and foremost, my bosses are my little people running around at home, and I don't get quite as much time as I used to. But I still carve out some time to make sure. One, I love to find myself in nature. Feel really uh, connected when I am hiking in the woods or if I'm out on the water. I'm a sailor. So, again, something I don't get quite as much time as I used to enjoy, but I do sail. Um, do ride motorcycles as well. I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie, which is something that's also followed me. But that's something that you know, uh, I found myself kind of falling into a bit of a flow state, kind of being one with the bike and the road, or one with a boat and the wind. As we find ourselves in colder days now, looking forward to hopefully getting on the ski slopes for at least a couple days on my snowboard. So those are some things that really kind of fill my cup. And outside of that, I just love spending time with my kids, with my dog. He barks a lot, but he's a great little pup. And yeah, I think it's critical to prioritize wellness for yourself, even when it feels like a nice to have, or you don't have time for it. You have to remind yourself that it's critical, right? I think about the analogy of the oxygen mask on an airplane, right? And what are the instructions you get with an oxygen mask? It's always to put it on yourself first, because if you're not helping yourself, you really can't be in a position to help others.
I agree, and we have a 11-year-old and a 9-year-old. So I I put them first often. Like if we were ever in an accident, my instinct would be to put the mask on them first, because that's just always how I am. But we do have to put the mask on ourselves. If we're not well, we can't help others.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
thank you for elevating that.
Yeah. And I
So
just
that's
want to say,
go
Dora,
ahead.
that, that instinct, I mean, that's an understandable instinct, right? As a parent. And truth be told, I would probably do the same thing in that situation. But that's, the perfect kind of metaphor for why it's important to be intentional about wellness, right? And that's, whether you're providing a wellness program to staff, which is often seen as, okay, that's nice to have, but we're busy. We have a lot of work to do. And then there's other critical benefits and one thing or another. But it's about a mindset shift to really kind of dedicate yourself to a practice of wellness that ensures that you're well functioning. I'll give you another metaphor there. If you have a car that, is just on the go constantly, and you're not gassing up, you're not paying attention to the oil level, and you're not paying attention to that check engine light, eventually you're going to break down. And then you're going to be forced to tend to the wellness, so to speak, of that vehicle. And we're the same. So, being
Yeah,
proactive there, I think, is essential.
but I feel like because of your line of work, you work with um, you know I feel like it's even more important to sort of practice what you preach, because you're helping people with their mental health and their traumas, and you're supporting people. And I think it's important to practice what you preach. And I think that's why your role is not a nice to have, it is essential. Um, Also for burnout, just like from a practical point of view, as like an employer and a business, you don't if people stay and people do their best work when they feel valued and supported, and making sure their wellness and having a role. I mean, I feel like your role is so unique. I don't think there are a lot of organizations that even have that specific role. It's usually relegated to HR. Like when I spent many years in HR for nonprofits, and it's like relegated. And so I think it just speaks volumes to your organization to have a role that's really intentional about wellness, and really practicing what is preached, and walking the walk and talking the talk. Um, so that being said, in terms of because you specialize in organizational development, but this is a question that could be answered in many ways, and I'd love to get your perspective on what community means and what it means to you. You have such expertise on organizational development, but I'd love to hear, however you like to answer it. What does community mean to you?
So, community means a lot of things, but if I were to boil it down to one word, I would say potential, because there is so much possible when you bring people together, especially a diverse array of people, different walks of life, different backgrounds, different perspectives, in terms of what collaboration can look like, mutual support can look like. And essentially, I'm a big believer that, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and that whether it is, working on a work related idea, or solving a or even parenting, there's community in just partners being together. It's always better to get at it with some help, right? We all need help at certain times, and we can all be helpful to others at certain times. And having a community means having a base, a resource, and really a set of trusted individuals to call on, as life's works challenges just arise. So, I think there's so much potential in community. You never really know that what you can fully do, but the more you lean in, the more you build networks, the more you build community, the more you can help connect the dots, whether that's you and somebody else, or two people in your orbit who would really benefit from being connected with one another.
I love that. I love that community is possibilities, are possibilities. I love that. And so it's a great segue to advice. Um, what advice would you give to the next generation of leaders? Maybe something that you would, tell your younger self.
Sure. I would say start with why, then figure out how. So, with regard to start with why, know what drives you, know what you value, what kind of things you enjoy as it pertains to work, what kind of things you really don't like as well, and what's meaningful. Right? There's so many causes or motivators or things that can serve as drivers for folks, and it varies from person to person. So, knowing your why, I would say, is square one. And then in terms of the how, there's so many ways to get there. I once read a book that reframed the idea of a career ladder into the idea of a climbing wall. And I loved that analogy because it's so true. At times the path is not linear, right? And sometimes a side project, or even a lateral move, or a stretch assignment might be that thing that can help you progress upward in your career. And then also we have to acknowledge and respect that not everyone wants to perhaps climb the ladder in the traditional sense, right? In terms of just rising in the hierarchy. And some really enjoy just being masters of their craft, right? And amassing perhaps new modalities. I think about some of the clinicians and therapists I work with who are nothing short of miracle workers, honestly and truly. And there are so many interesting therapeutic modalities that they can upskill themselves with, and people are complicated. That is not easy work. And I remember that back when I was a paraprofessional working with boys on the autism spectrum. There's a lot going on there. And so, whatever your craft is, whatever your path is, there's more than one way to get there. And I'll share a vocab word that I learned in grad school, which really captures that, which is equifinality. So,
Equifinality.
equifinality, which means exactly that. There's more than one way to get there.
I love that. I love that because leadership isn't always climbing up.
Hmm.
Um, it could be learning and continuously growing and learning and improving. I once had someone with my HR hat. Speaking of not wanting to climb up, I had someone who reached out to me. I had a job posting, and someone from a colleague from a long time ago who I loved and loved to work with reached out to me and say, I'm interested. And I said, but you're so overqualified. And they said, I don't want the stress of managing other people. I really just I like helping people. I like being in a support position. I feel like there's too much pressure and stress. And she was really content in staying in her level as long as she was challenged in terms of continuously learning something new. And I ended up hiring her, and I wouldn't have if she had just reached out, because
Mm,
I would have been, I was worried. You worry when people have so much experience and are so good at what they do, and that was their path for success. That's how the way they led. And so I love that analogy of, finding the why and the how, and what works for you, because leadership means different things to different people. It's not just a job title.
mhm,
And I love how you talk about clinicians and how complex their jobs are, that like climbing like up in the hierarchy isn't growth for them. It's really learning and really understanding the complexities of the role that they're in is satisfaction alone.
mhm.
I just love that concept. I don't think anyone has brought that really up um, in our on our show. So I'd love to toss it back to you and to ask you to share what how people can get in touch with you, learn more about your organization, the work that you do. What would you like our audience to know about you, and how to you know get involved?
Sure. Well, getting back to community, I'm always interested in building community, and again, the interest that led me to psychology in the first place, just a fascination with people, and especially what's possible in groups. So I'm happy to connect with anyone who perhaps wants to find me on LinkedIn. Name is spelled just like you see below. So that's probably the best way to reach me. Whether there's a potential collaboration, whether my wife and I, through our Eclat Culture, could maybe be helpful to you and your teams, or simply to chat. I'm always happy to do that. And I also wanted to share that I'm not sure when this episode will air, but right now it's 2025 is winding down, and this has been a tough year, especially for nonprofits, just with everything that's been going on in the country, and you know, getting back to why and what drives you. I encourage everyone to think about, what's a cause that's meaningful to you? And it might be something you're currently engaged in, or maybe something you haven't found yet. Find that cause and support, contribute whatever you can. Because it's the work of the nonprofit sector is critical, not just for uplifting some of the most vulnerable, but also just simply ensuring that everyone's well taken care of. I'm a big philosophy on, a rising tide lifts all boats, and big on service and impact. So that's why I've found myself a home in the nonprofit sector, and especially with a time of increasing need and reducing resources, the more we can find community together and support organizations and causes which are meaningful and doing impactful, important work, the more we all benefit at the end of the day.
Stefan, thank you for that. Thank you for lifting that up. Audience and viewers, do what you can to support the most vulnerable in our communities. So thank you so much. We're going to make sure that the links that you discussed are in the description of this episode. To our listeners and our viewers, you'll have access to that. And we'll let you know when the episode airs, so you can definitely spread that wonderful message of support for the nonprofit community.
Great.
Stefan, thank you so much for being here. We're so thrilled. We we know that folks are going to get so much out of listening to you today, learning about your story, learning about how to support people in wellness. So we're just so grateful to you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Dora. And if I could have just 1 minute, I have one more important shout out, and that's to you and the wellness community that you are building. It sounds amazing. And again, that kind of thing, it's not a nice to have. It really is a need to have. So I encourage all the listeners today to really check out that wellness community. I'm interested to learn more myself, and take care of yourself. Life is stressful, but we all deserve to have some fun too.
Thank you. Fun. That is it. When you said life is stressful, we all deserve to have some fun. It took me back to Ferris Bueller. I don't know. Then maybe I'm aging myself. Life moves fast.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I want to thank you, Stephan. Thank you for that shout out. Thank you for being here. I'm going to ask you to hold on a second while we roll our closing credits. To our audience and our viewers listening out there, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Especially if you know someone who needs to hear what we have to say about wellness. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Stephan, thank you again, and hold a moment while we roll our credits. You've been listening to Building Leadership Community. Watch on YouTube at Coach Dora M. Listen wherever you get your podcasts. Follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube at Coach Dora M. Visit me on the web at CoachDoraMendez.com. Hosted by me, Dora Mendez. Produced by Dora Mendez and Dylan Rogers. Graphics, editing, and sound mixing by Dylan Rogers.